you've got Debo Adigbile. He was a head of the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund. They represented Mumia Abu Jamal about 30 years after he had been convicted. He was on death row. They were bringing up a case which involved improper directions to the jury and some improper jury selection. They prevailed in this case on appeal. He was taken off a death row. The Republicans used that as a way of stirring up racial animosity. Ultimately, for them, it was just about trying to gut the Civil Rights Division. But you had seven Democrats who sort of bought into this notion of, rather than fight this Willie Horton thing, I'm just going to go along with it.
Yeah, it's really, again, I mean, the more you look at it from the Wayne LaPierre speeches that we've been talking about today to attacking, the free lunches and food stamps, I mean, the more you realize everything is still about race. I mean, there's certain other themes that tie in. There's definitely the masculinity, and that's attacking, that's why they attack women and attack gays and others for their silly sense of masculinity. But, and I put that in quotes, by the way, but so much of it is still about race. And so is this. You've got, this unbelievably qualified guy. He's African-American. He defended somebody African-American, who obviously wasn't exonerated, right? But the trial was overturned because of
the sentencing was found was reversed, at least, or mitigated, because the court agreed.
Right. And so what they're doing is they're playing on race. In this particular case, what this guy did is in the best traditions of the United States. It seems to be that they're throwing this out of our Constitution, where everyone, I mean, this was something the founders revered. The founders, these guys say they loved, so much so that John Adams, of course, as famously is told, defended the British soldiers at the Boston Massacre and got a bunch of them off, because this is what our country is supposed to be founded upon. That you do this, and there's this guy, I can't think of that's right, his name is John Roberts, right, who did some pro bono work for a serial killer who murdered multiple people. In fact, two of them who he murdered, two kids, the serial killer, were on the way to church when he killed them. Can you imagine if that had been a Democrat who had done that? Right. The ad Republicans would put out?
Right.
But that's what John Roberts did. And you know what? He did his constitutional duty. He did what lawyers should do in that particular case, not since he's been on the Supreme Court. But he defended somebody because that's the system we have, and that's the system we're supposed to revere. And yet, this is something they've used against somebody, basing it purely upon race. But I will say one thing. Maybe it's because I've complimented President Obama already this show, so what I giveth, I have to taketh away. The whole operation around this is just embarrassing to me. It just seems like they've learned nothing about messaging and communications. No sort of hint ahead of time that this could cause controversy. This is the kind of thing that if you're vetting people, you should know this is the sort of play Republicans will make. And if you know that ahead of time, what do you do ahead of time? You come out and you talk about this man and how he's done what's in the best traditions, of our history, and like John Adams, and you bring up John Roberts and you compare his actions to others. You make them have to defend picking John Roberts to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court if they've got a problem with this.
Right.
You make sure you've lobbied senators and provided any kind of public relations needed. You have him do interviews with people. You have interviews done with people he's defended, whose lives he's saved. Maybe people that were convicted wrongly or others. I mean, there's so many ways to get out ahead of this story.
When you introduced him, when you introduced that nomination, you should have quoted that story. You're absolutely right. You should have said, the president should have said, just as when John Roberts took a pro bono case of this murder of multiple people,
serial killer, yes.
And just as he did that, Debo also did this. That should have been front and center. You're absolutely right. It was very poorly handled.
It's just terrible, and that's what allows these Democrats, which still shouldn't be allowed to me, to peel off, and I mean,
That's
it's
right.
amazing to me.
This is
Heidi
not
Heitkamp and Mark Pryor, are busy voting against background checks to make sure that more cop killers actually can get their hands on guns. But when a guy gets a fair trial for being accused of killing a cop, that's a problem.
That's right.
Essentially the stance of those two Democrats. The other 5 are just as shameful for their vote on this.
And we should be absolutely clear that it was not going to ever work with the Republicans, but those 7 Democrats, they certainly would have felt a lot more pressure and had a lot more cover had the administration handled this better. And
that's right. And if he had known that there were some wavering ones ahead of time, had some sort of a public relations operation in their states to tell the story that we're telling here. It's called narrative. It's, what we just did. It's not that difficult to do, tying into what John Adams, one of our founders, did.
Yep.
The importance of this in our system to a trial by jury. It is an amendment. I know we're supposed to only care about the second one, but there's that Sixth Amendment thing too. Telling that story, telling the story of what John Roberts did, not just in a sentence, maybe a couple paragraphs. Go into the details of what the guy did that John Roberts defended. Make them then say that this is any different.
Right.
But they just never do this. It's like there's just I don't know. There's nobody home there. They've never felt they've needed to have any kind of coordinated communications campaigns, it seems, almost ever. A few times they've pulled them together, but I mean, it's sort of like what we saw on larger issues like health care and other things. I don't know what the hell's going on there. I really don't.
All right, Cliff. As always, a pleasure to talk to you.